Ahoy there! Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video for EVE Echoes. In today's video we're going to be doing a roundup and highlights of the developer Discord AMA that was put out on Friday, December 3rd. Now you might be thinking, hang on, this is the third video you've put out on this topic, Benzie, what's going on? Well, the original plan was that I would go through that AMA, pick out all of the highlights, and then put a video together talking about all of the best bits, giving my own thoughts and opinions. And whilst I put that all together, I would have a bonus video over the weekend, going over the AMA blow by blow for those who wanted to just get all of the information. Now ultimately that long video became a very long video, so I split it in half and I put that out on Saturday and Sunday to give us a full breakdown of the developer AMA over the weekend, and this is something I will do again for this week's developer AMA. On Friday I'll be going through that AMA, reading all the questions. On Saturday and Sunday, as bonus videos, we will have the complete AMA, blow by blow, every single question and answer in it. And then I'll compile together a list of all the highlights and round it up at the end for next week. Ultimately, I didn't have to put a list together myself, as it looks like NetEase have done that for me. It's a really cool little article here, so we're going to go through this as the highlights of the developer AMA. Of course, I'm going to be giving my own thoughts and opinions on this. They are my thoughts and opinions. You might disagree, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. If you do enjoy this video as well, please let me know by slapping a like on it, subscribe to the channel, and come find us on Patreon and the Redbubble merchandise store if you want to help support the channel. Anyway, with all that said and done, let's jump straight in, because that's already a lengthy intro. First of all then, balance adjustment. Any plans to balance armor links, like shield gets resistance on activation? The answer given was we have started to analyse the balance between armor and shield modules again. Currently we don't have a certain conclusion to share, but you will see it in future updates. Now, personally, I don't think there's any problem here. I think that armor and shield are both pretty well balanced for the moment, and certainly I don't think armor links need any balancing at all either. The reason that a shield field module gets additional resistance on activation to the ship activating it is because that ship takes all the damage for everything inside the bubble. One ship takes complete damage for everything. With an armor link, however, the damage is actually split between the target and the armor link guardian, so you don't need as high resistance because the armor link is already splitting the damage between two separate targets. There's also the fact that armor links have the ability to obviously just work. You don't have to worry about ranges or keeping your opponent a certain distance away, whereas a shield field module, the second that the opponent gets inside that bubble, well, the shield field module does nothing. It doesn't split the damage anymore onto that main ship. That means that the armor link works really well for brawling, because you can get up close and personal and not worry about whether or not the Guardian is actually going to be doing its role, whereas a shield field works much better for sniping, because all of that damage can then be, from outside the bubble, can be centralized onto one ship. These are asymmetrical modules, and they don't need to have exactly the same things. If you gave the armor link Guardian, if you gave the armor link module a passive resistance to it, that's just going to take things completely the other direction, and it's going to make armor linking way better than shield field as it is. That's basically the point here. It's asymmetrical. Don't go looking just for, oh well, they get this. Yeah, armor link gets a whole load of other stuff as well. When will interceptors and destroyers get meaningful changes? This is my question. Interceptors are overpowered and do too much. Destroyers are a non-existent class pretty much. This is planned in the next balance update, so yay, all of my talking to Lance Dot and Melos about destroyers and interceptors is apparently getting some meaningful fixes. We definitely saw as well the developers came through to the content creator chat and got a load of feedback about what we thought about interceptors, and most of it was pretty united in how we thought this would all work together. So hopefully we are going to be looking at some DPS nerfs for the interceptors, and destroyers hopefully getting some DPS buffs. I've done entire videos on essentially what I think needs to happen to interceptors and destroyers, so go look for those if you're interested in more info. When is the next balance adjustment? This is a simplified version of another question that I asked. In our new annual plan, balance patches will be set in April and October each year. so twice a year. The priority of balance adjustments will be set higher, and manpower will be reserved in advance. The scope of adjustment is mainly with two aspects: combat balance and regional output balance. Now, whilst I'm disappointed that it's still going to be twice a year that we get these big balance patches, I do think smaller, more independent balance patches would be a better way forward for numerous reasons. Firstly, the fact that it allows you to make quick adjustments and adjust on the fly, so if a problem arises, you can just sort it. And if you only change one or two things at a time and it causes a problem, well, basically you can change those things, look and see what happens, and then either roll it back or tweak it further. You can actually sort of modify and tweak as you go, rather than just making these big sweeping changes. Beyond this, it requires less manpower to do it this way, and most importantly, you are less likely to off-put a whole load of players because you're getting small little steps, rather than just going, oh, your ship is, your overpowered ship has been nerfed back into line. You can say it's overpowered, now it's slightly overpowered, now it's in line, and people have a time to adjust to these things, and to me, that's a better way of doing it. But hey, there we go. The nice thing of this, though, is that manpower will be reserved in advance, and priority will be set higher. Basically, no moving balance patches around, because the community is expecting changes, they're expecting fixes, and when you push it around, the community, myself included, gets pretty freaking angry. Having manpower dedicated to it as well means that it definitely happens. I'm just all for that. If we're not going to be able to get sort of faster moving balance, which we do get sort of. I spoke to the guys, and basically they have said that they might, change a few little bits and pieces, like if there's something really pressing, they might put it into weekly maintenance. So they have conceded on that, but ultimately it is still going to be two big balance patches, but they are going to be dedicated, which I like that bit at least. Why do we set the balance adjustment at a specific time each year? Because every time the balance is adjusted, the player needs to spend time adapting and rediscovering their familiarity with the game, so we'll only fix some bug-like content with maintenance every week, and will not adjust the balance. Now see, to me, as I just said, if you did balance each week, that's smaller little steps. You can do minor nerfs, see if that's enough, and most people will sit there and go, oh, I've lost 1% of my damage, okay, actually I'm still capable of doing what I do. People don't tend to react to that. If you did 5 minus 1%, that people are going to react to that better than they do a minus 5%, because we saw what happened with the Dominics, where people lost their crap over a 2% change. And I get it. I get it. Sometimes these things can be scary, and, you look at a big balance patch and it's like, oh my goodness, everything has changed. But if you do it in small steps, there's an old sort of analogy of a frog in a pot. If you put a frog in hot water, it will hop straight out. If you put it in a pot of cold water and slowly heat it up, eventually the frog will boil to death. Now, it's a bit of an extreme example, but ultimately, that's the theory I would be going for with balance patches, that you can make repeated minor tweaks and people just go, oh, actually, that tweak hasn't really changed much. Oh, that tweak hasn't really changed much. Oh, that tweak hasn't really changed much. And then one day they look back and go, oh my goodness, I'm absolutely fine. Like, none of this was as scary as I thought it was. It's taking small steps rather than giant leaps. Anyway, why did we skip the balance adjustment originally scheduled for October? Well, there are two main reasons. One, because they spent a lot of time promoting capital ships, carrier-based aircraft, induced jumps and new anomalies, so we didn't have enough manpower to cope with the balance adjustment accordingly scheduled for October. Yeah, there you go. Basically, capitals were the unnecessary capitals were the thing that caused us to lose the balance patch, okay? After the balanced version was released in April this year, we found that some players left our game because of this. I'm still not convinced that the balance patch caused people to leave the game. Okay, maybe a few left because heavy interdictors and destroyer interdictors got some nerfs. The destroyer interdictors for sure got hit way too hard. I do still think the cruiser interdictors though, they would... The problem with losing destroyer interdictors was that there was no alternative. They were the only good combat destroyers around, and losing those, well, you kind of lost everything. And they weren't overpowered on themselves. If you put a single cormorant interdictor on a gate, well, it's not going to just obliterate everything that comes through that camp. On the other hand, if you had something like a Celestis interdictor, yeah, those could provide single-handed gate camps. And if you nerfed the Celestis interdictor so that it wasn't a DPS thing anymore, you still had the Celestis covert ops, which... That's kind of what got me here, that I get why they nerfed the cruiser variants, but at least they had an alternative to fall back on. If you liked the Celestis, you could swap from a Celestis Interdictor to a Celestis Covert Ops. If you liked the Cormorant Interdictor, there was nothing to fall back on when it got nerfed. That is the only thing I can think that kicked people out of the game, that people went, like, screw this, I'm out. Because other than that, there was really nothing major in that balance patch. Yes, okay, scanning happened around this time, and I do wonder if perhaps part of the reason that people, like, there was an exodus from the game is because of scanning, and people going, oh my goodness, I can't AFK this game anymore. And there's a part of me that wants to say, cool, don't let the door hit you on the way out, but there's another part of me that says those were still players, and we still want players in the game. So I don't know. In the case of insufficient manpower, though, they go on, we made a conservative choice in order to avoid hasty, low-quality balance adjustments that would disappoint players and leave the game. I would argue that maybe you should have, like, pushed the capitals back and done the balance first, because the capitals weren't necessary. It's only existing players that are going to use them, and most of those existing players would rather have meaningful balance change than ships that do pretty much nothing. Anyway, moving on to server stability and bug fixes. The questions, now these really do centre around the fact that there was a screenshot and some footage of a battle on the Chinese server that was like 1,500 players, and it did not go black screen. Now, ultimately, there's a lot more to this. It did its rounds on Reddit, people got, understandably outraged, but didn't actually stop to ask the questions of why might this be. The outrage came first, the thought process came second. Why have the black screens been getting progressively worse? I remember fights with over 1,000 players in the system with no issues. Now even with performance mode, which the developers like to call potato mode apparently, if there are 400 players in the system, there are mass black screen issues, making the game unplayable. Now, the answer they give here is, in fact, from the logs we observed in the background, the situation should not have deteriorated recently, and the rate of occurrence of the problem has always been stable. However, as the number of people participating in battles has increased, the number of people encountering the situation has increased. We attach great importance to the issue, so we've recently added some new mechanisms to improve the stability of large-scale operations, including the previously introduced potato mode and the recent manual time expansion, time dilation. And we'll set these new features to be turned on automatically after they stabilise. I hope to be able to automatically improve the stability of the galaxy during large-scale operations without our manual support. Now, the first question a lot of people ask is, why on earth is this manual? And basically, it's because time dilation is not the perfect fix that people like to think it is. Like, look, it is probably one of the best and most creative answers to lag and system errors and issues and that any MMO has ever done, and credit to CCP for originally coming out with this, and NetEase for implementing it into EVE Echoes as well, into a mobile game. However, it does obviously impact how the game is played. You're not playing it the same way when you're under time dilation due to how it stretches time out. So it's not an ideal thing, and you want this to trigger at the opportune moment rather than too early. And there's a lot more to it than that as well. There's a lot of complexity involved in this. You don't just sit there and go, oh, well, when there's 200 chips in the system, bam, time dilation. It doesn't work like that, and they've also got to make sure that it's implementing correctly, it's activating correctly, and the automation is working. So what they've been doing is manual tests to make sure that time dilation is actively working. Then they are going to automate this. They're now doing all this research and testing and making sure it works. Then they will automate the process. Now, there are some other interesting points here to talk about as well. The fact that obviously the Chinese server is inhabited primarily by Chinese players who are all in the same region. That means latency is much less of an issue than a global server that's got someone from California, someone from New Zealand, someone from Russia, someone like me from Zimbabwe, and someone else sitting in Hamburg, Germany. Ultimately, that is always going to cause problems when you are connecting through together, because you're passing information to all of those people, and you may have low ping, but that doesn't mean everyone else does, and ultimately, it's the weakest link syndrome, that basically whoever is taking the longest means that their information might not be receiving in time. That is an issue. There's things like the client-side issues of how quickly your phone is able to process and return data, all that kind of thing. This is a complex issue, and to all the people squawking, why hasn't it been fixed yet? Because it's not a simple problem. This isn't just like oh, yeah, oops, we unplugged it here, it's plugged back in. That's not how this works. This is a complex issue that needs some real testing and real working to make sure it is perfect. Beyond this, it is worth noting when people sit there and go, oh, I remember fights with 1,000 players in the system with no issues. Yeah, back then we were mostly Tech 7, which meant mainly frigates and destroyers and some cruisers with 1 or 2 drones, and it wasn't until recently that drone doctrines became a thing. And remember, we know for a fact that EVE Echoes basically counts drones as individual ships, which causes a massive error. So whereas you had 1,000 players in ships, you've now got, say, 500 players, or 400 players using this idea here. 400 players, but each of those 400 players is using 5 ships, because they've got the main ships themselves and then 4 or 5 drones with them. So that now means, rather than 400 players and it was 1,000 players in 1,000 ships, it's now 400 players in 2,000 ships. It's a big difference, you see my point here. And that is one of the big issues, and they're working on it. The point is, they're working on it. When will the local bug be fixed? This is the whole thing that sometimes people coming in and out of local don't display properly, so you might be sitting there in an anomaly feeling mighty safe because it's just you and your friends in system, and then suddenly a red jumps in and you're like, hang on, local isn't showing a red, how is this guy here? How is he? Oh, I'm dead. In order to improve the ease of use of local, we've recently made some optimizations for it. Unfortunately, we found some underlying code problems during the process which caused many small bugs. We're now refactoring the code of local, chat and other systems, but because this is a relatively large project, it will take a certain amount of time, but we will have someone work on it. In the near future, player suggestions for local channel optimization will also be considered from the game. Now, there's a little bit they miss out here they did cover in the AMA itself. We will have someone dedicated working on it, they said, so it's a big problem for them and it is something they're working on. And again, I get really irritated when I see this. Oh, we pointed out this issue last week, why is it still an issue? Like, you can just click your fingers and bugs disappear. People clearly have never actually played with programming at all, let alone programming for mobile, which is ridiculously complex. And yeah, the tiniest little change can cause millions of unforeseen bugs, and you can only test so much in your own little environment. When you release it to the public, there are going to be thousands of devices that you didn't account for, people doing things that you just didn't think they would ever do. There was an example, when I studied cybersecurity and computer forensics, an example that our lecturer gave in one of the first lessons. You program a calculator to work out simple mathematical functions, 3 plus 5, 8 divided by 2, this kind of thing. Then someone types in apples times monkeys, and because it's no longer using integers or floating points or whatever, the whole app crashes. And that's simply because you didn't think that someone would be stupid enough to try and type letters into a calculator. And that's kind of the issue that we have here, that this is a complex problem. Complex problems take time to fix, and sometimes fixes cause more problems, at which point you need everything sorted before you can just hit the big green go button and launch it all. Moving then on to mining and manufacturing. How and when will mining be balanced and adjusted? Again, I've put a load of videos out about this recently, most notably my Fixing Industry video. Do check that out if you're interested in knowing my thoughts on how we can fix industry and mining. The answer here, though, we expect that there will be changes to minerals in the first half of next year. The expected direction is to increase the material opening rate and increase the degree of automation. This, to my ear, is about basically increasing the amount of minerals in blueprints, which, if I'm correct, is the right way forward. Material opening rate, for me. Anyway. But this involves the cornerstone of EVE Echoes and will still need more time to demonstrate. Demonstrate's the wrong word here, it's more time to test it and make sure it's all okay, I think. Could you give more details on what you're going to do with mining? I believe you're focusing so much on PvE and PvP that you forget that most players are industrial. We feel forgotten. That's a straight up lie there. Most players are not industrial. We know from NetEase's own numbers that approximately 90% of characters have a combat focus, leaving only 10% approximately for industrial, and that was at the game's peak. If we're talking that loads of industrial players have left, then it's going to be less than 10% of the player base. So it's not a huge thing. I'm not saying that it means it doesn't need fixes. I'm not saying that that means it doesn't need fixes. It does. It may be niche, but it's also niche because it's not working properly. Some loot and rewards from the PvE and PvP content, they say, will also be required with manufacturing to get the final product. This is how industry people can get a benefit from new gameplay updates. So they're not saying there's nothing coming for industry, they're just saying that even when they do stuff for PvE and PvP, if they're going to make blueprints as the reward, then industry players also get to be involved in that. You may not be involved in the new, for example, you may not be involved in the new rally points. If you're an industrialist, you're not going to be jumping in a ship and jumping into a rally point. But you can use the materials that people are gathering there in order to build capitals. When Faction War Games was added, you might not be jumping in there yourself, but things like blueprints and that could be bought from that would then go through to an industrialist. Please fix the material demand of manufacturing right now. ISK are the biggest chunk of cost for high-tier ships. Please reduce the ISK cost like 50 to 70% and increase the materials needed, especially minerals, not so much PI, times 4 to 5. Thank you for pointing out this problem, they say. This is actually a question we've thought about before. Although the construction cost of EVE Echoes is higher than that of EVE Online, this comparison is actually a bit unfair to Echoes, because the two games are not exactly the same in terms of ISK output, recycling systems, and quantity. When considering whether it's possible to reduce the ISK required for manufacturing, we will pay more attention to the impact of this part of ISK on the recovery of EVE Echo's output. Basically, they're saying we need ISK sinks. If we don't have ISK sinks, inflation happens. The current conclusion is that if manufacturing costs are reduced, the recovery of ISK will enter into an unhealthy inflationary stage. There we go. Therefore, we will not make adjustments directly. I think this is something that they do need to consider, because dropping the ISK does lower the ISK sink a little bit, but there's plenty of ISK sink in the game. And ultimately, we need to increase the ore sinks in the game. There just aren't enough of them. Future plans. What does NetEase plan to improve player retention and new players? We attach great importance to the retention of new players, so we spend a lot of manpower on the optimization of newbie missions. Although the current version still has a lot of room for improvement, compared to when we first launched in August 2020, the new player experience has had a lot of progress, which it has. The new sort of tutorial system is so much better than the old one. The old one just kind of gave you the advanced tutorials and went, there you go. This one now actually has all these little missions that teach you things and showcase things. It can be a little long in the tooth, but hey, it works. And ultimately this is why I started doing the content that I make, because EVE has an incredibly high barrier to entry. People ultimately sit there and go, oh, I'm really enjoying this game, but I'm so confused by it. Or worse, I'm so confused by this and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm done. And that's not great. Once people cover that barrier, they tend to stick around for a long time, so it's just trying to get people over that barrier where they understand how their ship actually works. They understand how capacitor works, how propulsion works. They understand their ship statistics and what all this means. They can then sit there and understand that, oh, okay, just grinding missions is pretty dull, but there's a load of stuff out here in nullsec which isn't as scary as I was led to believe. Let's go and try that. I think that's a big part of it. They've said they haven't stopped. There are more new plans for new players, such as Novice 7-day mission set, and the guidance to help novices join a corporation. Good. Although EVE Echoes is a relatively hardcore game in terms of the setting, we still hope that with the help of novices and corporations, we can help more new players stay in the game. Now, I've made this announcement before. I would love to work with NetEase on this and actually figure out how to do a proper sort of academy system in-game, where it's not just, oh, here's a load of tutorials. Actually have some missions that you can select. Like, we've got some brief rundowns that give you graphics and that, but actually, like, you know, oh, you want to know how capacitor works? Cool, well, here's an actual lesson. You're going to jump in, there's going to be some basic text thrown at you, and then we're going to demonstrate it live in combat. We're going to show you how a Nosferatu works, we're going to show you how a neutralizer works, we're going to show you what happens as your capacitor decreases, how it recharges, all of that kind of thing. I think that would be really cool, and I would love to work with NetEase in making that a reality. Will you add the ability to rename our ships? Yes, this feature is under development, huzzah, and we've been testing it. This is expected to be released in the first half of next year. If it comes in January, happy birthday to me. Excellent. I really want this. This is one of the things I've been crying out for since launch. It's why I have a character called Silent Rose, just because my Hurricane has always historically been the Silent Rose. So I would love to be able to rename that character back to a Captain Benzie, and then just have the ship called the Silent Rose. Beyond this as well, just like on my main character, having multiple of the same hull, and having to jump into them because they've got different fits and figure out which one's which before I undock, it takes time, it's annoying. I'd love to be able to say, oh, this is my cargo hauling probe, this is my one I use for running through and getting PI, this is my exploration probe, that kind of thing. I think that would be important, and I'd love to have that sorted. 1v1 arena with custom fit ships, please. A 3v3 arena with custom fits is under development. It will be sub-cap 3v3 battles, and you can bring your own ship without losing it. You can join the battle from both stations and citadels. The battlefield will have a simple red zone mechanic to prevent endless kiting or running away. More details to be shared later. 3v3 PvP mode coming. You get to use your own ship with your own fits. You and 2 mates with your own ships and fits jump into arena against another pre-made team of 3 players, blow each other up, and when you undock again, oh look, you've still got your ships. This is amazing, and I can't wait to see this. And it looks like it is a straight-up battle, no objectives, just kill or be killed. When are we getting stuff like mobile tractor units and mobile depots to help out PvE players? Currently their lack makes gameplay unnecessarily tedious and boring. I'm not sure it overly does. If you're a PvE player, chances are you tend to stick close to a home base anyway. Ultimately, I'd argue the mobile depot is more a PvP thing, or exploration, because it's when you're far away from home and you need to sort of basically change your fit or move some stuff around. That's what the mobile depot's for. The mobile tractor unit is all about looting. You drop it down and basically pull stuff in together, and then loot it all in one go. We're making a new module to help with this. This may be released in early 2022. Awesome, that could be pretty exciting. They put this down as something that would help with routing. I think this is possibly something they meant to say with looting, but we'll see. I'll be keeping my eyes open for that one. Will there be new anomaly content, like including dreads in dead spaces? It will not exactly be new anomaly content, but it will be some new PvE content for sure. I'm still of the opinion that dreads shouldn't be added to dead spaces. Dreads fit nicely in their new little rally point anomalies. I think having some new PvE content like Abyssal Dead Spaces could be really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff that could be coming there. A bit more variety. Even if it's just the encounters actually getting meaningful missions to them. We've talked about this before, those missions where it's not just kill everything. Sometimes it could be try and loot the container, it could be blow up a mining installation or, an asteroid base. It could be kill the named NPC before, all the rats overwhelm you. There's even one particular favourite of mine in EVE Online where you have to hold someone in position using disruptors and webifiers and all of that until Concord arrives. If you kill him, you lose, so you need to actually just survive and hold him in place, which is a pretty cool way of doing it. Once the development teams approach to tech level currently, many higher tech level ships are just buffed lower ships. Can we get variety in the hulls or bonuses to make them more memorable and less strict upgrades? I've said this before, I really hate the Oracle 1, Oracle 2, Oracle 3 approach. Even the fact that, going from a Cyclone to a Cyclone Guardian, the Cyclone Guardian is just better, despite the fact that it's a Guardian and also does more. As a basic combat ship, it's better, but then it also gets all those other bonuses on top. It was our old design to make higher tech ships just a better version of lower tech ships, and I do think that making ships more specialised will bring new strategy and more fun. Again, I don't want to toot my horn on this one, but this is something that Melos and I talked about extensively in our conversations, where I sat there and said, look, Melos, I get where you were coming with that, but one of his big problems was, do you think that players are not going out in tier 10 ships for PvP because they're too expensive and all this kind of thing? And I said, yeah, basically. That's basically it. They use the ships they want to use because they're fun. They only use a Tech 10 ship if they're ridiculously rich or if it is literally the only option there. Ultimately, adding specialisation is a much more fun way of doing things, changing it so that you've got options for everything. There's no reason that a Cyclone Guardian should be higher DPS and just better at everything than the Cyclone. It should have a trade-off. The fact that it is doing, so I'm not talking Guardian, I've done it again, Cyclone Command. Cyclone Command shouldn't have the same DPS and same survivability and everything else as the Cyclone. The Cyclone should be a combat ship. The Cyclone Command should be about the command bursts, and it should lose something from the basic Cyclone in order to get those command burst specialties. That's my opinion, and it seems the developers are actually agreeing on that. Some adjustments will be made to specialise the ships in the future, and I'm super excited for that. When can we see corporate wallet divisions? It's a headache and pain to give every corp builder full wallet permissions. Yeah, it's a dangerous situation as well. Also, when can we see the ability for personal hangar divisions, perhaps with a small fee paid to the structure owner? We planned a new hangar division tool for next year as a quality of life update. Wallet divisions are not on the plan, but it's worth considering adding them to the plan. Yeah, quality of life updates do appear to be a big focus for 2022, which I'm all here for. Are there plans on adding ship simulation, where you can simulate fits and auto-fit by buying in market? This is a feature from EVE Online. We have finished the development of ship simulation on the server end. The client end feature is queuing up in a future schedule. So yay. If you are looking for a fitting tool, by the way, do head over to your particular Play Store, whether it's Apple or iOS, Apple or Android. I think there's also a PC and Mac version and Linux version as well, and look for Sweet. I did a video on this. It is a fitting tool being made by one of our own community. It is an excellent little way of testing out fits and getting some ideas of what's going on here, but adding it in-game as well. Sorry, I really don't want to make this app obsolete because you're clearly working hard on it, but having it in-game would be amazing as well. It's great to see that it has been finished. They're now just waiting to add it to the game so you can actually try different modules and see what stats your ship would end up at without having to buy the ship, without having to buy the modules. You can just try it out, and then once you've decided what you want to do, well, go and buy the bits and put it all together. When can we play EE on the Mac M1? So many players are waiting for this. Again, I disagree with that. So many players are waiting for this. That's going to be a minuscule aspect of the entire community. How many players are playing EVE Echoes? Divide that by the amount of people with a Mac M1. There's very few people, I think, playing EVE Echoes who will have a Mac M1, and even fewer who would actually use it to play the game. It's a mobile game. One of the big advantages of this is you can play it anywhere on your phone as you go. And to be completely honest, most players do tend to do that. Heck, Infinite Lagrange, and the other game I cover, there is a PC client, and I've got that installed on my little potato laptop. It runs. Have I really played on the laptop? No, because I could just grab my phone and do it that way. It just, It says here, though, our apologies, according to the agreement, we currently will not have any technical investment for running on PCs or Macs. At the same time, we will not provide technical support for running our game on emulator, and to me, this is absolutely the right approach. There is already so much difficulty involved in, developing for mobile because of the various different types of architecture, different devices, different screens, just so many different things to change on a mobile that you just don't have on other platforms. Along with just, there's so much. I really can't go into it, but seriously, look up the difficulties of mobile development. Developing a mobile game is much harder than developing for any other platform. And I think adding in emulators and adding in M1 support and all that, it's extra development, extra testing, extra fixing and all this kind of thing. Because remember, every device that you develop for, suddenly there's the possibility of bugs. And certainly on emulators, I don't know if it's, it's sort of current running theme. That things like BlueStacks tend to run extra hot when they're trying to emulate Android. It uses a lot of processing power. We don't have good emulation, which causes all kinds of additional bugs, and it's just extra development time to try and fix those things for a minority group. This is a mobile game. The focus always should be on mobile game first. I don't know. What time can we get a Killmail API and jump gates? APIs are not planned for upcoming updates, but they did talk about this. Tailless Fox is taking suggestions, and if you are an API developer, reach out to Tailless Fox and see what you can do in helping getting an API set up. We have finished the jump gate concept design and are waiting to implement it at the right time. Jump gates are basically special stargates that you as an alliance can build, put them in your space and connect them to distant systems. You stock them with fuel, and any ship that goes through with the right permissions will consume an amount of fuel based on the distance jumped and the tonnage of the ship in question. Now, you can actually twin these with stargates on the other sides, and if the alliance that you're twinned with does, sort of disappear on you, the gates will still work. You just might not have permission to jump back, and the game will alert you of this. It's a really cool system. I like jump gates, and I'm super excited to see that they will be coming to EVE Echoes as well. Anyway, there we go. Those are the questions, the main highlights of the Discord AMA from December 3rd. There is another one this week on Friday, so make sure you are joining the official EVE Echoes Discord. Head through, find the AMA channel, check the two times, because there's for me, it's an early morning time and sort of a midday time. Make sure you find one of those, jump in and ask your questions. Great way to find out what's coming in EVE Echoes. I'd love to hear more. I'll be there, so hopefully see you all there. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on all this in the comment section down below. Otherwise, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.